How's it going, everyone? My name is Amos, and UnitedHealth just posted their Q2 2025 numbers, and I really needed a moment to just sit with the numbers, to digest it before rushing to pump out a video. And I gotta say this, there were some good, but overwhelmingly, it was pretty bad. Bad, at least for the short term. And as you can see on your screen right now, after they posted their earnings, dude, it just plunged. They're negative 9% in the past 5 days. That's why I'm wearing a red Hawaiian shirt. Past 1 month, negative 16%. Year to date, pretty horrific. You might want to watch your eyes, graphic content, negative 48%. A blue chip dividend compounder with cheese. What the heck is going on? So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my opinions on their earnings and the numbers that they just posted. And we're going to look at my updated price targets, my price forecast for them in the future, based on the guidance that they gave us in the earnings call. And then at the end of the video, we'll be going over my game plan with my UnitedHealth holdings, because I do own shares of UnitedHealth. And by the way, I live in Japan, and apparently right now there's a tsunami that's happening. And the magnitude of the earthquake that started it is an 8.8, and it started in Russia, and there's waves smashing all around the Pacific Ocean. So it's crazy to think that if the situation goes south, this may be the last video that I upload. And it's like every 15 minutes or so, you'll hear a loud siren. I'll try my best to take pauses and breaks whenever that happens, but if you hear it, that's what's happening. But for now, I am safe and sound. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and review the good. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's pretty short. So their revenue, as you can see on your screen right now, they posted $111 billion of revenue for the past 90 days. Year over year, that was a growth of 12.9%. If you read the articles, and if you look at their press release, they just round up and say 13% growth in their top line year over year. So even though the business itself is growing inherently, when you post numbers like 13% growth in the top line year over year, it is not a dying company. They are growing. Despite that, their earnings, their net income, their bottom line, their profits per share, dude, it went down by 40% year over year, and it gets worse. Now, let's move on to the bad. And the bad is a pretty long list. So the bottom line up front is that their profitability has taken a very severe hit. For the past 90 days, the medical costs were $6.5 billion more and higher than they had previously anticipated. And what's crazy is that their Medicare portfolio was responsible for $3.6 billion of those costs. So to be above $6.5 billion, their actuaries and their forecasts and their financial planning teams, dude, completely off the mark. And it doesn't help that there's government funding cuts to Medicare. And how is this potentially going to manifest? Well, UnitedHealth and the leadership team right now, they're contemplating on leaving, yes, entirely leaving several ACA and Medicare Advantage markets. The ACA is the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare health insurance plans, which means about 600,000 customers will be affected in their Medicare portfolio, and about 140,000 customers will be affected in the ACA plans, which means those companies are going to have to pivot and transition to another health insurance provider like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Humana, or even CVS's Aetna. And I think the highlight of the earnings call was this. Their Optum Health, which is their in-network hospitals and clinics, dude, it's just bleeding and losing millions of dollars. Verbatim, they said losing millions of dollars. So even though overall UnitedHealth's revenue increased, Optum's revenue decreased by 7% year over year. Consequently, the leadership team has made the executive decision to reduce their outlook by $1 billion. And now their revenue expectations for Optum is about $101 billion, which is a decline of 4% over 2024. 2024. And to round out all of the negative noise, there were some positives. The pharmacy arm of the business, their revenue increased by 19% year over year, and then Optum Insight, which is their health data analytics software as a service thing that they sell to other hospitals and health insurance players, well, their revenue increased by 6% year over year, and their margins improved. So the forecast for the rest of this year, for the latter 6 months in 2025, well, they're expecting the revenue to increase by at least 11%. This quarter, they posted 13%, meaning the next 2 quarters, it might only increase by like 9% or even 8%. And in my humble opinion, this is what caused the stock to just plunge after reporting their earnings. Their earnings per share, their net income per share, their bottom line per share forecast is now $16 per share. Dude. That's a huge revision and a cut from their previous numbers that were as high as like $30 per share. But most expectations, it was around 23 to 26 bucks a share. To go from that to down to 16 bucks, not good. However, going forward, the leadership team is now anticipating and is expecting a 10 to 12% EPS growth from this year's $16 per share. And that's going to be a very important number when we crunch our numbers to forecast a price for them. So when you think about it, 16 bucks per share, that's what they're posting right now. If we hop into a time machine and we jump back to 2020, that's exactly what they achieved 5 years ago. So we're going back in time by 5 years for UnitedHealth. And they're also anticipating growing their dividend at a rate of 5% for the time being. So it's not being cut. It's not even just being sustained. They are growing it by 5%. So what are my thoughts and opinions after tuning in to their earnings call with all the fumble jumble of people unmuting their mics and talking at the wrong time? Well, I'll say this. Well, honestly, there's no way to spin it or manipulate it. It was a really messy and an ugly situation and a picture. But the leadership did seem pretty confident about the future in terms of like 2026 onwards, but for the rest of this year, not too good. Reason being is that the cost of doing business in the medical and in the health space, yeah, the costs are really high right now. But having said that, I think their problems are very fixable on a high level. Because when you think about it, all they really need to do is increase their insurance premiums for the Medicare arm of the business. Because that's the one that's causing a lot of issues and more costs than anticipated. Once they increase those premiums, I think their margins will stabilize and then their EPS should go up at a modest rate. It's the same thing that happens with like car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, and whatnot. When the insurance company has to pay out more claims than anticipated, then they usually increase the premiums for everybody across the board. And that's why I'm saying right now, every so often, like every 2 to 3 years, I think it would behoove of you to shop around and switch your car insurance provider. But going back to UnitedHealth, yes, the government could absolutely just push back and say, no, you cannot increase the price of your Medicare. You got to eat those costs. But I think the facts speak for themselves. You know, more and more people are seeking treatment, surgeries, and mental health counseling. Yeah, they mentioned like 2 different sentences in the earnings call talking about how more of their customers are seeking out behavioral health and mental treatment, which I think is a great thing. Instead of just bottling it all up, to be able to talk to a psychologist, a therapist, or a counselor, I think that's really good. Because in the past, I think there was a lot of stigma about asking for help, but I'm glad that's fading away. And now it's seen as more of a, hey, if you're hurt, whether it's physical or invisible, like up here, you gotta seek help. And I say all of that as a guy that went through severe depression. So I'm a huge advocate of mental health, especially for men, because I think we just bottle up our emotions and it comes out and manifests in the worst ways possible. But I don't think you're considered weak if you reach out for help. I think it takes a strong individual to realize like, hey, I'm drowning, I need some help. So, huge advocate of mental health. But anyways, talking about UnitedHealth and what's happening. With the data and the numbers of more and more people seeking out treatment, my guess is that they're going to increase the bill for the government to reimburse them on January 1st when they get the opportunity to recalculate and redo their books. So how much they charge in premiums, deductions, out-of-pocket pay, and all of that jazz. And maybe I'm being naive here, but I think regulators will support their strategy given the increased demand for treatment from their customers, because you can't just let UnitedHealth, the biggest health insurance company, fail. And then towards the end of the earnings call, they had a Q&A with all the various financial institution analysts. And I believe it was the CEO that said that their catalyst going forward right now is Optum Insights, which is their AI software that everybody uses or wants to because it helps diagnose, approve, or deny claims more efficiently and everything in between. You can think of Optum Insights as Palantir for the hospital and in the medical field. So it's really important, and I can absolutely see why that is their growth driver going forward. But my overall thoughts on the earnings and the health insurance industry, don't get me wrong. I think health insurance companies, when they deny claims for life-saving treatment, I think they're absolutely evil, despicable, and it's horrific. And between you and me, I hate the idea of having to pay premiums every single month just to make sure that I can afford to get treatment if I get hurt. And I hate that as much as the next guy. I think most of us are unsatisfied with how much it costs to get anything done in the US in terms of a medical treatment or surgery or an operation. However, on the other side of that argument, UnitedHealth and the other insurance companies, they're the reason why we're able to afford treatment without taking on millions of dollars in loans just to get an open heart surgery or get cancer treatment or whatever. So on one hand, UnitedHealth, they're a necessary ingredient in our healthcare system. And on the other, well, I truly think we need healthcare reform in the US. It's absolutely a broken system. And I'm glad that the price of insulin for my friends and family that have diabetes, I'm glad that the prices of that have come down and it's more manageable. But there needs to be more reform across the board. So if you hate UnitedHealth, I mean, what's the alternative, right? If there's no health insurance at all, should people just be on the hook for a $300,000 operation? Taking one ambulance to the ER? Dude, that's gonna set you back like 10 grand. Or is the US going to emulate what other countries do, like in Korea, Japan, and most of Europe, and adopt a single-payer government-funded health insurance? And I think in the US it's called like Medicare for All. Is that gonna happen? I don't know. But what I do know is that UnitedHealth's role in the US healthcare system, vital, important, crucial. I don't see them going away. So having said all of that, now let's go ahead and look at updated price target based on $16 earnings per share that they relayed to us, the investors, and to the rest of Wall Street. So for 2025, UnitedHealth is expecting to end the year at $16 per share. Okay, that's rough. I think in the last video, we went with a very modest and a conservative number of about 23 bucks, whereas the expectations and forecasts were as high as 26, 27, 30 bucks. So 16 bucks from that, I can't hide the fact that that is pretty bad. And I'm thinking by the end of the year, their PE, their trading multiple, if it's at a 15, then unfortunately, I'm thinking that UnitedHealth's stock price has a lot more room to fall, because then the valuation should be about 240 bucks. And I think that's why their stock price is plunging. By the time you watch this video, it might already hit 250, 245, or even 240. However, if their PE picks back up and it goes up from, currently it's like 11, but if it goes back up to like 18 or even 20, then I think they can finish out the year, meaning in the next 6 months, at about $320 per share. And if we repeat this process and jump on down to 2028, 3 years down the road, then based on their earnings per share growth picking back up, the pace, and it's like 13.5% from the year prior of $19.89, in 2028, I'm thinking that they'll achieve $22.58 with the PE ratio of a 20. So in 2028, worst case scenario, based on what they are saying, shaving their numbers down a little bit to bake in a margin of safety, then I think in 3 years, you might not want to hear this, but UnitedHealth, it might only go back up to 451. However, in a very bullish scenario, if their PE ratio and their trading multiple has a little bit of more bullish momentum baked in, and we're talking about a 23, then I think their stock price could hit $519 based on the current $16 per share forecast that they outlaid for us, and the growth of this happening year over year. There's a lot that needs to happen for it to hit $520 per share. And the discounted price would be $308.40, meaning if you buy it at $308 and it compounds at a rate of 10% year over year, then it would hit $519. And from its current price point of about $261 if UnitedHealth hits a number between the bearish and the bullish case scenario, and we say like $475 by 2028, then from this price point of $260, they would need a 22% annual return year over year. And that's a lot to ask of them. However, for a company that in the past did outperform the market to be going on a sell-off this deep, I don't know if it's possible. However, I am choosing to remain positive. I'm not delusional because I know that UnitedHealth is not going to turn around in a month and then go back to being like $600 a share. I don't think that's going to happen. Absolutely no chance. When you zoom back and look at their total stock market performance, August 2nd of 1985 to what it is right now, with this steep sell-off, they're still up by 72,000%. So their history looks pretty good. However, as you know, past performance is not indicative of future gains. So as of right now, I think UnitedHealth, this is a patient game, a sit and wait. This is not a stock that is going to go on a rocket ship to the moon in the next week or in the next 3 months. It's going to take time and it's going to take patience. And because the bar has been set so freaking low, I want to say this is the bottom, right? For you to cut your forecast and your guidance multiple times in a single calendar year, I want to say that's the bottom, but unfortunately, it could keep falling. For all we know, in the next 3 months, when they post their Q3 numbers, they could say something terrible. They could say, oh, our forecasts are wrong. Now the earnings per share for the rest of this year in its entirety could only be like $11 per share. If that happens, it's going to be a free fall. So what exactly am I going to do? What is my game plan when it comes to UnitedHealth? Well, I think with how things are unfolding, I would categorize UnitedHealth as a moderately risky investment for the short term. And when I say short term, I mean for the next 180 days, for the second half of 2025. We don't know if it's going to go further down or not. I wouldn't be surprised if they do bounce around 250 or even 245 before they remain flat. And worst case scenario, based on their technical analysis, they've already penetrated and went below their lower Bollinger Band and line of support. They could tumble on down to $199 a share if the rest of the year is not as clean as a politician's tax return. It has to be squeaky clean, like Mr. Clean's bald head. Any more setbacks, any more bad news, and $199 is quite a possibility. However, when it comes to UnitedHealth, here's what I'm going to do. I am doubling down. As a matter of fact, I did put in some buy orders last night and it did execute, and I bought 6 more shares of UnitedHealth at $265 a share, and it executed on July the 30th. So I'm doubling down. I previously bought into UnitedHealth at $281. And now my average cost basis should have come down a little bit. And I'm practically doing the same thing that I did with 3M back in 2022. If we zoom out and take a look at what happened to them, in June of 2021, they were $172 a share. However, in 2022 and going into 2023, they went on a massive sell-off to the point of no return. There was some speculation that they were going to be bankrupt because they were being slapped in the face with multiple lawsuits, and their margins took a hit due to the pandemic supply chain issues. Do you remember during the pandemic when a used car cost more than a new car and there was no more toilet paper? Yeah, 3M, an industrial company, they got hit pretty darn hard. So what did I do back then? I decided to buy into them. I didn't buy into them right here. I didn't buy into them right here. I bought into them right here at about $70 a share. And as you can see, after I bought into them in October, it went down even more. And then I saw a relief rally and I was like, oh, thank goodness. When my investment was up by 20%, I did contemplate selling out of them, but I did not. And then they went down and then my heart sank. After that, I was like, you know what? 3M, you're going to be a buy and hold for me. Consequently, what happened? About a year and a half to 2 years later from their sell-off that began in 2022, now they're back up and operating their business as usual. Meaning, had I bought into them during their initial dip, somewhere like right here in July, just look at this. If we fast forward a few months, I would have been down negative 14%. And if we fast forward even more, during their very lows in 2023, I would have been down by negative 33%. But had I just held on, look at that. My goodness, I would have been up by 41%. But as of right now, my cost basis plus the dividends paid out, I'm up by 85%. I know this is a very specific example, but I kind of feel the same way about UnitedHealth. I think there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of hatred, and there's a lot of uncertainty baked into their future. And I think right now, I see opportunity. I know it sounds stupid, I know it sounds naive or even dumb, but going back to my past investments of Meta in 2022, or even Google in this past year when everyone else is fearful and is saying this company is doomed, what I'm trying to say is when it comes to a high quality dividend compounder with cheese, more often than not, they rebound. They rally, they recover, and they're back to all-time highs within a span of like 1, 2, maybe 3 to 5 years. But the conversation changes and the mood becomes really grim if we're talking about a very crappy company with shaky financials that is unprofitable. But when it comes to UnitedHealth, take a look at their numbers. Their revenue is still growing year over year. If we look at it on an annualized level, it's 9.7%. Quarter over quarter, it was 13%. So even though things don't look so good right now, let's see their free cash flow. Their free cash flow situation is still $25 billion. Their financials and fundamentals still look good. So for me, I'm going to be doubling down. And I'm doubling down knowing full well that it could be a falling knife. They could go on down to 245. They could go on down to 199. And I will continue to double down. I will dollar cost average. I have pretty high conviction. I feel like in 1 year, potentially 3 years, I think things will work out. Otherwise, I think this will be a really good lesson video that I'll make, saying like, okay, I thought this was going to happen and it didn't pan out. So in the future, blah, 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 blah. So it'll either be good mood, good vibes, or this will be a really good lesson that's going to teach me the hard way in the stock market. But anyways, that's what I'm doing with UnitedHealth. But more importantly, because I told you my game plan, please tell me, what are you guys doing? I'm super curious. Are you going to double down? Are you going to sell out? If you sell out, I completely understand. I think there's a lot of risk and uncertainty, and their future looks pretty bad in the next 180 days. So if you jump ship, I get it. I don't blame you. But regardless, tell me what you guys are doing. Anyways, I love you. Stay safe. Good luck in the stock market, and I think I should probably pack my bags and prepare for an evacuation just in case things get bad over here. I'll talk to you guys next time. Hopefully. Peace.